Permaculture design could really be a useful tool for anyone looking to go off-grid to use as a way to design their properties. And within permaculture, there's a set of 12 principles that can help guide anything that we do. And today, we're going to go over those 12 principles, so stay tuned. Aloha everybody, my name is Sean with Homestead in Hawaii. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I look forward to getting a little bit deeper into things. We've been covering all sorts of things such as air layering breadfruit, how to build soil mix, how to treat and build with bamboo, all sorts of like hands-on how-to activities. But today I wanted to go a little bit deeper into principles of permaculture, 12 principles to be exact. And these 12 principles can really help hone in everything that we do. Whether it's on the homestead, at our job, or whatever, we can design our lives. And I'm telling you, all of us are designers. Every day you're designing what you put on, what you're gonna make for your next meal, where you're going to go to work, or what you're going to do. You are constantly designing your life, whether it be consciously or unconsciously. So today, let's dive into these principles, and perhaps they can filter more into the conscious mind so that we can make more informed decisions in our everyday life. Principle number 1, observation. It gets talked about so much in the permaculture world, but I don't think very many people actually take the time to do this step. And it is number 1 for a reason. Taking the time to observe your site, to really sit there and to watch and to see how things are. And not to put your own spin on them, but just to watch and observe. You know, interact a little bit, walk around, pick up a stick or two, see what happens if you just move something. But just making observations when those things happen is key to be able to create your design later on. These observations will be able to help us dictate what we put into our design and how it's all going to flow. It all stems from this one principle right here. Observation is key. It's like a little meditation in the garden. Set up a hammock, relax, chill, stay a while, and just be there and take your time to take this principle to heart. Principle number 2, catch and store energy. Being able to store the energies that come onto your site is crucial into creating a sustainable homestead. Here we have our water tank that catches the water that falls on our roof and stores it for us to use at a later time. The solar power that we have on our home catches that sun, stores that power in batteries, and allows us to pump this water into the nighttime. The overflow from this water feeds our plants here, and it creates a way to also catch and store the energy. All these things catching and storing energy in the form of plants, water storage, solar power, wind generators, you name it. However it is that you can find ways to do this, you must capitalize on them and implement them on your homestead. Principle number 3, obtain a yield. Now I could plant any sort of plant on my property, a flower or an ornamental tree or something, but why just stop there? Why not get something more from what you do? So here I planted a fruit tree, an abiu tree, where I can obtain a yield, a yummy fruit that I can eat whenever it's in season. I don't have to go to the store for this thing, and it grows right here for me. Instead of having a tree that doesn't produce anything, I have a tree that produces food for myself and my family. Now that is obtaining a yield, and you could do this in numerous ways. It's all up to the imagination of the designer and how many ideas you could come up with to obtain a yield. Having eggs from chickens, or creating an income from your homestead like I'm doing with these YouTube videos. I'm obtaining a yield. So just think about what you can do to obtain a yield and include that into your designs. All right, principle number 4 is to accept feedback and make change accordingly. So for a while we tried to grow plants that just did not want to grow in our rainy tropical climate. We tried to grow tomatoes, eggplant, bell peppers, But no matter what we seem to do, they just did not thrive here. And so we just decided to give up on those things, growing them outdoors, focus on plants that really wanted to grow outside, and create a small little area where we can have these plants growing undercover, protected from rain and protected from pests. This has provided us a new yield from our garden that if we didn't accept that feedback and just kept trying and trying, we would still be getting nowhere. So we've implemented a new design, and now we found success. And so that's how you actually accept feedback and use it to help aid your design, no matter what it is. Principle number 5, use renewable resources. This is a no-brainer in the permaculture world, but if you're new to this, whenever you have the option to use renewable resource, it should be the one that's used. Now, I could have tapped into the power from the power company that supplies electricity to people on this island through gasoline fueled power plants, but instead I opted to go with solar power. They have their downsides, indeed, everything kind of does out here in this world, but it lasts me for 20 years, and with one time carbon offset, I get 20 years of renewable energy. Or that could be in the case of wind energy, harvesting wind, it's renewable. It comes onto my site for free. Harvesting water is a renewable energy that I can keep catching and keep using here on my property. Whatever it is, identify what you can do to create a renewable energy source for you. Maybe you get into methane digesting and create your own home cooking gas, or there's a variety of things. Like I've already mentioned, you're only limited by your imagination as a designer here in the permaculture world. So think about how you could reuse energy and be able to implement renewable energy on your property. Permaculture principle number 6, produce no waste. Whatever you're doing on your garden, whatever your design is, can you find a way to not create waste? Can you build your home out of natural materials found on site where you don't need to throw anything away during the whole process? Can you take all your food scraps that you use in the garden and repurpose them in compost piles or in worm bins that make new fertilizer for your garden? Can you find other ways to save your waste and use them as a resource, like cardboard for sheet mulching, or just throwing the mail out there in the garden and sheet mulching over that? There's ways to eliminate or drastically reduce your waste. All it takes is a little bit of thought, and you can come up with creative ways to minimize all the consumption that is just destroying the world. So whenever we take our designs into account, think about the waste involved. Where does all that come from? Because if we're not creating a system that has as minimal waste as possible, then what are we doing? Woo! Before we move on with all these permaculture principles, if you haven't had a chance yet, please hit the like button below, leave a comment, let us know how you use permaculture principles in your daily life. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this YouTube channel. It really helps to keep us going. Just trying to provide as much mana'o to all of you out there so that you can continue to grow and build your homesteads. All right, so now back to the next principle. Principle number 7, design from patterns to details. Now, when I came to do this design on my property, we didn't design each and every fruit tree out from the start. What we did was we designed the larger blocks. We made the pathways and identified where things would be planted. And then from there, we identified what size tree we wanted. We created the structure. We didn't say, I want to put an avocado tree here, or I want to put a breadfruit. I just said I wanted to put a big tree here, a small plant here, and I have that all on the design. And then as those details came into place, I began to hone it in even more, where I began to think, okay, I'm going to put my breadfruit there, my avocado there, my comfrey or pineapples over here, and all those details started to fall in place. So designing from the patterns to the details really helps when you're getting into any sort of design project. Rather than focusing on those details too quick, you really could get the broader scale patterns in there and then focus in on them, and that'll make everything better. Permaculture design principle number 8, integrate rather than segregate. So at one point, I had my chickens located in a chicken coop in the corner of the property. It got severely neglected back there. Chickens started to die. They were segregated from the rest of our system, and because of that, they suffered. So I said, forget it. These chickens, my system is now mature, and I can begin to integrate them into my system so that they can begin to do the weeding for me. They can fertilize the garden. They can clean up discarded fruit. They can do pest control, all sorts of things if I just set them free. And so now my chickens run through the garden. They self-reproduce. They raise their own chicks without me having to do any incubating or any of that extra work. They feed themselves. Once in a while I throw out some compost, but really not much. They take care of that part for themselves. And then when I want to, I can harvest their eggs. We've made a few nest boxes here and there where we know that they're gonna lay some eggs, but we also have to find them ourselves. And when we're ready to actually harvest the meat, we get to do a little hunting. And so with a pellet gun, we hunt our chickens here, and we are able to provide our meat in that way. Integrate rather than segregate. Find ways in order to have everything together as one cohesive whole. Principle number 9, use slow and small solutions. In our garden, we have this forest garden in the tropics where soil just tends to just disappear. And so we have to add constant mulch and woody material in this forest garden that would break down and be able to provide more nutrition and soil for our trees here. And if we just kept adding fine soil, it would disappear with all the rain that we got. So every now and then we got to take stumps and branches from trees that we cut, like this stump right here, and we just plant them in the garden. And these things become a slow release fertilizer in the garden that houses fungi and plants and insects and bugs that are beneficial and have a relationship in the garden that helps nourish and feed these trees. And this is just a small and simple solution that we found to be able to increase our fertility around here with very minimal work. And so it does multiple functions with just the one element that we put into our garden here. Principle number 10, value diversity. With anything, with any system, you'd want to diversify. It makes sense. Hedge funds do it in the stock market, businessmen, farmers, and even you in the home garden and on the homestead, you could diversify. And for instance, for me, I diversify my income. I have little fruit trees that I start and I sell every now and then and make a couple $1,000s a year doing that. I have this YouTube channel and a blog that makes me some money, and I have a couple landscape clients, and once in a while I do some consultations and permaculture designs for folks. And all that allows me to have a diversified income that if one thing went wrong, I'd still have a source of money from another. And that has proved to be very important, especially in this day and age with COVID and with people who had their jobs all tied up in one industry, such as the tourist industry. They're out of work without any way to have any income coming in. Whereas for me, I might have had my landscape job slough off because of COVID, but I still had income, because especially with fruit trees, because more people are buying nowadays. Permaculture principle number 11, utilize edges. Edges are where the interface between 2 points meet up, and so much happens at these places. Here in the food forest, we have an edge behind me with a taller overstory breadfruit tree, and then below it we have some pineapples and yacon growing over here behind me, and they take up the edge of the food forest. So as the food forest tends to get higher in height, we have the lower plants in the front of that edge and the taller plants behind it, and it creates this ecosystem where more life tends to interact. Wherever you find edges, there tends to be more going on, and that's an area that we want to take advantage of in order to enact our systems. So when you're building your food forest or when you're designing out your permaculture property, focus on the edges, grow out from the forest, and then develop from there. and then you'll soon realize that it works better than just putting a tree right in the middle of a hot sunny field. It works better to have that tree closer to the edge. And last but not least, principle number 12, creatively use and respond. Now for me that means find resources and find a cool way to reuse them. So for one, we have this ice cream bean tree behind me. When I cut the branches and prune it down, I could just easily haul that off to the mulch, or I could find a way to reuse that into my ecosystem here. So I chop these branches down, I leave them to dry out on the ground where some leaves mix in with the soil, but then I also have a great resource to draw from when I do my compost toilets, which is also taking a resource and using it creatively. I turn that compost toilet into fertilizer by utilizing these leaves from the ice cream bean tree to mix in with my compost toilet and create a balanced fertilizer that way. And I don't have to bring in any other materials for doing any of that. It's all right here, growing right here on my property from trees that I have to prune anyways. So it's a great reuse, and I feel like it's a creative reuse of something that otherwise really wouldn't be utilized in this garden. All right, everybody, I am Pow. That was 12 permaculture principles. That was a lot to get in. I hope that you recognized what they are and find ways to implement them into your everyday life. I guarantee that starting to hold these principles in your mind and use them when you make decisions, it'll really help you create positive projects that are sustainable, regenerative, and make a difference in not only your life, but in the lives of everything around you. So once again, thanks for watching today, everybody. This is Sean with Homestead in Hawaii. Ahui ho. Till next time.